You're listening to Under the Shell Podcast, the best in America.
Welcome to Under the Shell, presented by Testudo Times. I'm Brendan YSL.
Sam Jane.
And Michael Howes.
And this week we bring on Jackson Canfield, graduate student defenseman on the Maryland lacrosse team, to talk about the season so far and preview the Johns Hopkins rivalry.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So the story of this lacrosse team, at least this year, has been a lot about the defense. And that definitely was the case this past weekend against Ohio State. What kind of allowed for a great bounce back performance this past weekend?
I think just as a team, we always look at just resetting every week and taking every week to what it is and like making sure that we put our best foot forward. I think we just had a great game plan and everyone knew we needed to have a bounce back. We were playing a great team and we knew we needed to get a win. So sorry about that. We just wanted to put our best foot forward and show that we still are the same team that we played in the past. And we just got to get back to that every week.
I think it's kind of happened twice now. After the loss against Michigan, you guys had a really good bounce back against Penn State. Is that kind of something that was being talked about in the locker room that, obviously you're going to take each game the same amount of seriousness, but after a loss, is there any kind of talk about, we have to have a better performance?
Yeah, I think like our team motto is be the best. So we kind of want that with everything we do, especially after a loss. You got to look at yourself. What could you do better? So we put a big emphasis on making sure that we do have a better performance next week because we want to take every game as serious as possible.
I wanted to go back a couple weekends to the Rutgers game. You guys lost 6-8, something that probably most people weren't expecting. I'm assuming in the locker room that wasn't expected. If you had to boil it down, what went wrong in that game?
I think there's just a couple things. I think we didn't play our best game. I think we just didn't play like Maryland lacrosse for a full 60 minutes. I think we dug ourselves a little bit of a hole towards the beginning of the game. We gave up some goals that we wouldn't want to give up normally. So it put some pressure on our offense to feel like they needed to do more at the beginning of the game. And I think we're just a little sloppy turnover wise. And that's kind of stuff we focus on. We just want to be a clean team and be a smart team. And I don't think we played to that standard during that game.
I know that'll definitely be the case, having to play a clean and smart game going into the Johns Hopkins game this Friday. They're obviously not having their strongest season, but I assume that's something you guys aren't thinking about. It's still the rivalry game. I assume you guys are still pretty focused on that one.
Yeah, we know we're going to get their best game. It's the biggest game of like the season at this point. It's the rivalry. We haven't won the Crab in a couple years. It's at home on a Friday night. There's not going to be a better place to be Friday night. So we're just taking it as, it's another game, but it's very serious and very important. Like it means a lot to the program. It means a lot to the alumni that we talk to, getting the Crab back. No matter what Hopkins' record is, it's going to be a big game. We're going to get their best shot and we're going to give them our best shot.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's as you said, it's always a big game no matter what the records are. Kind of going forward past that game into the Big Ten tournament, you guys are not able to win the Big Ten regular season, but I assume that's giving you guys motivation to maybe get revenge against, Michigan as well as Rutgers.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had a couple years where we haven't won the regular season and we haven't won the Big Ten tournament. So that's definitely a goal for the team is the ability to get back to that spot. We want to get to the championship and play well in the Big Ten tournament. That's always a goal for the team to win the regular season because that's not possible. But to win the tournament, it's something that we're looking forward to. But our first goal right now is obviously Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, absolutely. Kind of talk about individuals. Logan McNaney obviously set the program record for saves last weekend. Is that something that was on his mind or on the team's mind going into last weekend?
No, I mean, I think as a team, like it's a lot about the team. That's what it is. I mean, Logan makes the defense look great. Like it's really easy to play in front of a guy like that. So him making the saves he does makes our job a lot easier. So we definitely give him a lot of credit for what he does. But Logan will tell you that it doesn't mean anything. It's about the team wins. So that's the biggest thing for like everyone.
Hey Jackson, wanted to ask you. You guys, there's an article published in the Diamondback this week that looked at you guys are scoring almost 2 goals more a game against top 10 opponents compared to other teams, and your losses this year have generally been to unranked opponents, whereas against you guys have beat, I think, half of the top 10 of inside lacrosse. Why do you think that is that, you've maybe struggled with lower ranked opponents, but then really elevated your play against some of the country's best?
Yeah, I think it just boils down to like us as a team, like wanting to play a smart and like smart game. And the games that we didn't play to our standard, unfortunately, I've been to some of those teams that maybe aren't in the top 10. I think we just, I think just they give us their best game every time we play. And it's easy for them to get up for those games. And we're trying to give our best game every time. And, you know, it's just hard sometimes. You play a long season to give that best game for 12 games straight. And unfortunately, it happened versus those teams. But we're really just trying to play a smart brand of lacrosse, and we didn't play up to those standards during those games.
Do you think that that's just like, you said that other teams, get up for you guys, and naturally it's kind of easier, I would imagine, as a player to really lock in for a number 2 ranked game against Ohio State versus, a game against Rutgers. When you're playing different calibers of teams as a player, can you kind of take us through the mindset of going through those opening games, or those big games per se, and what the preparation is mentally beforehand?
Yeah, I think we try and keep it the same. Like it's a Big Ten game at the end of the day. Like these are big games for us. Like we want to win the Big Ten regular season championship and then the tournament as well. So we try and not have any let up between if it's a number 2 ranked team or it's someone that's not ranked. It's a Big Ten game. Like it means a lot. Um, there's a lot at stake anytime you play a Big Ten team. There's like the seeding, the bye week. Just if you want to play an extra home game, like that's what you're playing for with those games. So we try and not handle it any differently. Obviously, you feel like a little more pressure after, especially after a loss or even playing a big like top ranked team. But the way we handle like the week is the same. Like our process, what we put into it is the same, and we hope that comes out on Saturdays. And unfortunately, in the 2 games, we haven't had the performances that lived up to our standards. But we try and prepare like every single week is the biggest game of the year because it is. It means a lot every time we play a team.
This is your 6th year in college lacrosse, so you've played tons of seasons, or tons of games, tons of seasons. Do you feel that after losses or after tough moments in the season, younger guys will start asking you questions, and just in general, younger guys have been looking up to you?
Yeah, I definitely think so. I've been around and I've seen a lot of things. I've been on teams that have won tournament games and then conference championships, and then being on a team that made it to the national championship last year. Like I've gained a lot of experience throughout my 6 years. I think I try and pass along some of those moments to the younger guys. Because a lot of the young guys want to be too hard on themselves during the week or during a game, and you realize that like it's all about the next play. That's the biggest thing that it boils down to is the next play. You can't change what happened. Like you just got to go hard and make the next play. So that's the biggest piece of advice I try and give the young guys. Like after a loss, like it's never as bad and it's never as good as what you think on both sides. So that's like the biggest piece of advice.
I know that you said that obviously Logan, kind of the team, and that's for sure the case, but what's the best, like, after the game, did you guys do anything with McNanny broke the record? Was there any sort of kind of celebration? I mean, obviously a huge win in the game, but for a player of his caliber to get to kind of etch his name in the record books, what was the best story you had post game or even just like afterwards, kind of joking with him or talking with him about it?
Yeah, like Logan got the game ball, which for getting the most saves. So that's like the classic what you get after breaking a big record like that. But I mean, I think everyone on the team just got fired up. Like one, it was a big win, and 2, like Logan like breaking the record. Everyone kind of went crazy in the locker room. So there wasn't much about it. Like we joke with Logs, like it's easy for him. Like it's easy for us to play for him. Like he makes some ridiculous saves and makes our job easy. So we kind of give him a hard time about that. But I mean, Logs is just Logs. Like he's a laid back guy. So we try and not give him too much.
When you're transferring, obviously you transferred from Vermont 2 years ago. Do you ever think about like who the guy you're going to be playing in front of is? Do you ever like did the goalie that was going to be playing at Maryland ever come into your consideration when you were thinking about transferring?
I mean, it did. Like playing for Logan, like would be great. So It definitely does make a difference. I think just transferring to Maryland, it kind of just the historic like precedent of being a great defense like goes into my mind. I'm going to a place that is known for defensemen. It produces great defensemen throughout its whole storied career here. So I think that's the biggest thing, and just playing for a group that has that same mentality. And I think the be the best mentality is kind of what separates and makes Maryland special in that regard, especially in the recruiting process. It's just every single day working to like be the best and reaching for those high goals. And this is a team, there's only a couple teams every single year that compete to make it to the Final Four in the national championship. So just being at a program like this was just something special, and just having the opportunity to join a program like this was amazing.
I wanted to ask you this because we talked to Dante Trader, former teammate of yours, who played football and lacrosse, and we asked him, why do you think that the men's lacrosse and even the women's lacrosse team has been able to get over the hump time and time again? You guys constantly are in the Final Four, as you said, the national championship, but other sports, the bigger ones, football, men's basketball of late, haven't necessarily been able to. What do you think about like inherent advantages that the lacrosse program might have compared to other sports? Is there anything that stands out to you that kind of gives you guys an edge that consistently is putting you in the championship and Final Fours?
Yeah, I think that's tough. I think a lot of it is just Maryland lacrosse, like it's the DMV, like what it is for lacrosse, just high school and all that. It kind of sets you apart. You look at like other sports, and you look at like the SEC, or you look at the ACC for basketball, and schools like that. Like football down south, like I'm from Florida. Like growing up, it was college football. That's all it is. Like that's what you look. That's what you watch. Like no one's watching the Jags near me. So like you're a Florida State, you're a Florida fan. Like that's what it is. In Maryland, like lacrosse is almost that sport. You're like you're there to play. You're playing lacrosse. So I think that probably helps Maryland lacrosse in that regard. But also I think it's just the culture that we've said of like be the best. Like that's everything we do. Um, I know all those other sports like work really hard in what they do. So I'm not taking anything away from them. I just think the culture that we've established, and that the standard is to make it to those games. So I think that's kind of what helps separate it, and just Maryland being a lacrosse state helps.
Definitely. Well, thanks, Jackson. We appreciate your time. Good luck this rest of the year, and we'll be looking forward to seeing how you guys play out.
No, thank you for having me.
Moving into some things that have happened in the past week before we talk more lacrosse, let's talk about men's and women's basketball transfer portals. Both teams have brought in some new faces since we last recorded. All right, guys, break it down for me.
Yeah, well, the men's team had a lot of scholarships to play with, obviously. So Buzz Williams has been handing them out like candy, making some big-time additions here recently. A starting lineup really starting to take form. We obviously know about the Texas A&M transfers that have come in: Andre Mills, George Turkson Jr., Pharrell Payne, and Solomon Washington. But he started to kind of now add some players beyond the Aggie reach. He picked up Elijah Saunders, a Virginia commit, or a Virginia player who averaged just over 10 points a game last year. Definitely a really nice addition as kind of a stretch four. Can play a lot of different roles for this year's team. I think that there's a decent amount of potential with him. He started 26 contests, and he was quoted in Inside Maryland Sports saying, his decision mainly had to do with Buzz Williams. So I think that relationship was played a huge role. Shot at around 35% from three last year, so can definitely kind of space the floor, because Maryland will need that. Right now, as it stands, you're looking at, they have a lineup of potentially Miles Rice, Solomon Washington, Pharrell Payne, Elijah Saunders, and then you still are looking for kind of that scoring guard. Mike, they made a recent addition, to try to add a little bit of scoring punch. Talk to me about some more of Maryland's transfers.
Right, you hit the nail on the head there about Saunders. I mean, that's a guy who, again, like we've talked about these transfers past few weeks, none of them statistically like jump off the stat sheet, but a lot of them are double-digit point scorers. And you look at the landscape of college basketball now, where a lot of schools bring in a star freshman and they score the majority of the points for the team that season. But there's also the strategy of roster building, of developing players. And I think that's the big thing that you're seeing from Buzz Williams, this transfer portal cycle is, yes, these aren't star guys. When you look at the roster, it's not like, oh, I can pick this guy, he's going to be the go-to guy this upcoming season for the Terps. But if even just one of them, let's say Pharrell Payne, he blossoms into that go-to guy for Maryland next year, that's a pretty solid team. And really, Buzz is just hoping that one of those guys kind of takes that next leap forward in their junior year, in their sophomore year for Maryland. So overall, I do think the roster's in a good spot. A pretty interesting development from the past week. A lot of people were talking about James Madison, guard Bryce Lindsey, who's now in the transfer portal. He released his top 6 the other day, and Maryland was not in it, which was a little surprising for the Baltimore native. I don't know if he's trying to pull a Zion Ely and say, you guys need to recruit me more to come to the school, but that was definitely surprising, seeing Lindsey not even mention Maryland within his top 6 schools.
A guy we didn't mention that I think is probably one of the bigger ads, Isaiah Watts from Washington State. That's kind of one of those scoring guards that I think Maryland has needed. He averaged 11 points and shot over 34% from 3. Son of former NBA player, or grandson of former NBA player Slick Watts, and has 2 years of eligibility remaining. His game I really like complementing Miles Rice. I think that both of them play really well as kind of combo scoring guards and have a good chance of making up a decent backcourt. I do think that there are significant defensive concerns there, and I also think that you'd like to have more of a facilitator. Maybe that's what Williams envisions David Coit doing. But for right now, getting some scoring punch in there, they need it. And these last 2 transfers, Watts and Saunders, I think are really nice pickups, and both probably will slot into the starting lineup. Brendan, as it stands right now, there will be more additions, obviously, no question. But how does the starting lineup of Miles Rice, Isaiah Watts, you can flip it around, either Solomon Washington or maybe Andre Mills, and then Elijah Saunders and Pharrell Payne. How does that sound to you? Is that a tournament team? What are you thinking?
If you told me that a year ago, I would have said I don't even know what you're talking about. But as it stands today, it's really hard to know. I think the whole thing with their roster right now is everybody, all the big names that played last year that Buzz has brought in have averaged somewhere between like 9 and 14 or 15 points a game, which when you think about it, you have 7 guys that are doing that. That's probably enough each game to win a lot of basketball games. But at the end of the day, there's only one basketball, and it's just hard to know with so many guys who have not played together on the floor how they're going to gel. I guess that was kind of the case with the Maryland team last year, but it really wasn't. Like it's just really hard to know when you take guys that are all kind of Mod Podge and put them together how they're going to play. And I just don't think we're going to have really any sense of that until the start of the season. There is some thought that, obviously there's right now 4 A&M guys, 2 that were redshirt freshmen. And so, definitely a good look for Buzz Williams that he was able to continue working with those guys. And as Mike mentioned, development piece is definitely a big part of it for him. But I think without one more piece that is like the person you want to have the ball in their hands when there's 10 seconds on the clock, take the game-winning shot. Without that piece, it's hard for me to really say right now this team is definitely going to be in the tournament. They have pieces to be competitive in the Big Ten, but it is so hard to know at this point in time.
A lot of people talk about nobody returning from last year's roster, lack of continuity. But to your point, Brendan, I mean, he is bringing over 5 Texas and A&M guys. That is a form of continuity with the culture that Buzz is bringing, the type of system that he likes to run. So there will be a little bit of continuity with the team this year. Might not look like it, but
yeah, they just didn't have Maryland on the front of their jersey last year. It's also just like when you look at the schools that all these guys came from last season, none of them were really that incredible. And so I guess the whole point is like, we just don't know how these guys are going to perform in big, clutch moments when the Xfinity Center is super loud and, in a game like that. And obviously Texas A&M had some pretty legit environments. They played in the SEC. They had a bunch of those games. Texas A&M was the only team from the list that people have come from that have, had seasons that were really meaningful last year.
Brendan, we're talking like though, the portal is filled with mid-major guys, like
I mean, that's how it
lower
works. That's how it works.
players. And I think, yeah, so I do think that it's significant, though, when you look at the trends. Williams has clearly prioritized high major guys. He's gone, I think, more of the route of let's pick up role players from high major teams than trying to add Jameer Young, for example, from a lower level school who averaged a ton of points and clearly dominated against that competition. I think he's kind of been more, taking the approach of let's just get guys who understand how to play a role, have played in high major conferences, and really get, what it takes to play in college basketball. And some of these guys, I think, when you look at, have a couple years of eligibility remaining, which is obviously a good thing. Isaiah Watts, Turkson, Mills, even Miles Rice has more than just a year of potential time to play in College Park. So clearly trying to bring in some high level talent, and I think that you do, as Brendan said, have to make at least one more add that brings some significant scoring punch, I think, because right now none of these guys seem like first options on a team, and it's fine if you have a bunch of tertiary pieces, but at the end of the day, you need somebody to kind of elevate their game and become a legitimate 12 to 15 a game scorer in the Big Ten. And right now, I don't really see anybody on the roster who's doing that. So I think that's a significant need here moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure there's going to be some more pieces, and we'll continue covering it. Going from the men's side of the transfer portal to the women's, they've only had one more name announced in the past week. It actually got announced this morning. We're recording Wednesday morning. And it's a player who's played already 5 years professionally in Slovenia and on the Slovenian national team. Leah Bartlemy, probably not my best pronunciation there. What do you guys early thoughts on her, and only averaging somewhere around 5-6 points a game in her play, but still a good guard pickup with a lot of professional experience.
Yeah, this is somebody who, was in the WNBA draft process and is clearly, I think, a nice add. She has over a year of eligibility remaining. Maryland's listing her as a freshman for now, but they're working through compliance to try to figure it out, according to a team spokesperson. So definitely kind of a long-term play in that regard. But this is a player who averaged almost 13 points a game in a professional, league. Obviously, women's international leagues are a little different than men's. They're not as highly competitive like how it is on the men's side. But this is a player who, played with the U18 European team, played with the Slovenian senior national team during FIBA, and is someone who I think, I don't know how much of a year one impact she'll make. I do think that, she has a chance, especially with the guard spot opening up with Sarah Biasu, but I do think that this is a player who could come in and in the next season, really after kind of getting acclimated to the scene of Maryland, might make a big impact. And I think that is a really nice add. And I've really been impressed with Brenda Friese's offseason so far. Retooling, refueling, and not just looking for this year, but this is an add who could pay off dividends down the road. How it plays off between her and Kendall Walker will be fascinating to watch, because those are going to be the two names that'll be competing for that lead guard role. So I think it's a really nice add. At worst, it's a long-term play. At best, she comes in and is one of the better players on the roster, because I think she does have that type of potential.
Let me redo that. Brenda Friese knows how to use the transfer portal. I mean, I think that's my biggest takeaway through their transfer portal cycle so far. I mean, you look at what we just talked about with Buzz Williams and the men's side of things. They're picking up guys who, yes, they might have played at a Virginia, they might have played at a Texas A&M, but they averaged like 10 points. Buzz Williams knows they can be a role player. Brenda Friese is bringing in players who she knows can be a full-time starter for the team next year. You look at Gracie Merkel. She was a regular starter last year for the Nittany Lions. She averaged 15.5 points. Garzone was a 3-year starter at Indiana. You look at the Slovenian guard. She was on the national team the past year. So these are proven players that Friese is bringing in, trying to replenish the departures from this past season. So this is another offseason in a row now where I look at what Brenda Friese has done, and I'm like, she is pretty good at using the portal. And it's really been the past 2 years, because you look at the year before that when the transfer portal really started to tick up. Her only addition was Jakia Brown-Turner. And while I think that was a success, clearly it wasn't enough for that team this that year. So yeah, I'm thoroughly impressed with what Freese has done through the portal.
Yeah, and I think coming in with already 5 years of professional experience, that's never going to be a negative. Just being around that type of environment is definitely a positive. So I just think her floor is extremely. Her floor is not that low, but her ceiling is extremely high. I mean, this could be a player who has had decent 3-point shooting percentage, and if she can put it together in the college landscape, could be a dynamite piece that probably a lot of schools didn't really have on their radar. So kudos to Brenda Freese for getting her to Maryland.
Let's talk from a team that are in the offseason to ones that's going through the peak of it, their season that we say. Maryland men's lacrosse taking on Johns Hopkins this week. Massive game. Brendan, just break it down from the top and kind of give us what this game could mean for the long-term implications of the Terps season.
Yeah, Maryland is coming off that good bounce-back win against Ohio State. As we talked about with Jackson, Logan McNaney set the save record. Overall, incredible defensive performance against the number 2 team in the country. They once again take down the top 10 team. I mean, this team is able to beat anybody in the country. They snapped Ohio State's winning streak. They were the hottest team in the country, and they really controlled the entire tempo of that game, winning 13-8, went on a big run in the middle of that game. The Johns Hopkins game is usually the game that Maryland has circled on their schedule, but Johns Hopkins has not been good this year at all. Last year, they played a super defensive game against them, but this year, it looks like I would be shocked if Maryland does not win this game. They've had the edge in terms of metrics all season. Johns Hopkins just really, their offense has not looked that good, which is the exact formula that Maryland would love, because they're obviously, as we talked about with Jackson, we've been talking about all year, Maryland is a defensive team, and, coming into the game, Johns Hopkins doesn't have the strongest offense. This could be a game where you see Johns Hopkins maybe score 5 or 6 goals, and then, Maryland at that point only really needs to score 10. If McNaney plays in net the way he did last week against Ohio State, we could have another performance like that. So I would expect this to be an easier game for Maryland, but as we saw in the Rutgers game and the Michigan game, if they overlook their opponent, it's going to be big, and that's the thing with any rivalry game, especially this one. Where they're playing for a trophy, they're playing for pride. Really, anything is possible because Johns Hopkins at this point in their season doesn't have much to lose, and so if they can upset Maryland, this is their big game. But I would expect Maryland to take this one. And then as you look forward to the Big Ten, Maryland is no longer able to win the Big Ten regular season. It's going to come down to the winner of Michigan against Ohio State. Both those teams sit at 3-1 currently in the Big Ten. They'll play this weekend. Maryland obviously playing Friday. They sit at 2-2. The best they can finish is 3-2. If Michigan wins that game, then Maryland will be tied with Ohio State and they'll get the 2 seed. So Maryland will be either likely the 2 or the 3 in the Big Ten tournament, and they're definitely out for revenge.
Definitely a massive matchup with Hopkins, and I think one that when you look at we talked about last weekend being a potential turning point. I think this would be a stamp on kind of the continued narrative that Maryland is thriving against top teams, and beating Hopkins in a rivalry game where they've struggled in that aspect would be a huge step in that direction. So massive game upcoming. Women's lacrosse is another huge week. Take us through what's going on there with Kathy Reese's team, Brendan and Mike.
Yeah, so they played Virginia a week ago at this point. It was kind of the same story we've seen in most of their losses, that the goalkeeping just wasn't at the level that it had been at in the previous years. JJ Soriano allowed 10 goals on 16 shots, and then Julia Ward came in and allowed 3 goals on 4 shots. So JJ Soriano was obviously the starter, but when she struggled, they tried to bring in other pieces, and it just hasn't really worked. That was the same against Ohio State. Maryland took that game and what was really a very strong defensive effort, held Ohio State to only 11 shots. They won the turnover battle. They won the draw battle. So, they've looked very strong in the Big Ten. They obviously only have that 1 loss to Northwestern. They play Rutgers and Johns Hopkins this week. They play Rutgers on Wednesday night, a game I would expect them to win. And then Johns Hopkins, as we're talking about the men, still rivalry game. I think that's going to be a much harder game for them to win. I just think against these top 15 teams who have much stronger attackers and midfielders, the goalkeeping isn't at the level where you can have enough confidence to say, for sure, if they play their game, they're going to win, because you just never know. I assume JJ Soriano is going to be in net. She started every game at this point, but without a significant bump in save percentage, they are relying a lot on defense and relying more on scoring than this team traditionally has.
Yeah, Soriano's really struggled, and I think that's been a surprise to all three of us, just the lack of goalkeeping, especially when it's been so strong over the recent years. So we'll have to see how they can mitigate that. Goalkeeping and pitching kind of been the themes of the struggles of some of the spring teams. Mike, baseball dropped 2 of 3 to Oregon. Pitching was a kind of at the forefront of those losses again. Give us your biggest kind of takeaways from Maryland's staff and what's been going on there.
Again, it's just a lack of consistency from them. Friday night, you have a really good start from Kyle McCoy. He goes 7 innings for the Terps, and they're leading after the 8th inning, 4-3. After Jacob Orr hit a big home run in the 8th inning to put them ahead. But then you bring in Christopher Cespedes. He pitched the 8th inning. You bring him back out for the 9th, and his first time ever in a closer spot, and he gives up 2 runs. It's just a lack of roles on the team. Swope has talked about it a lot this season. Guys have to step into roles. Guys got to claim roles. They got to find their spot. Nobody's really claimed that closer role, and that's hurt them. For a team that didn't lose too many close games last year, became known as the Cardiac Terps because of their ability to come through in games like that. This season, they're on the losing end of those. They did win one of the Sunday doubleheader games. They won that 12-2, run-ruled Oregon, actually. But then, game 2, the rubber match of the series, they fall 13-3. Another one of those performances where you're like, wow, wish they had a little more pitching depth there. And this was a close game heading into the 3rd inning. Not the 3rd inning, the 5th inning. But then Andrew Koshi comes on, allows 2 home runs in that frame. And at that point, Oregon has a 5-run lead. It's basically over at that point. It just kind of looked like the team was kind of emotionally drained from having that Saturday loss where they could have won, then having the big run rule win, and then to give up a big inning like that. Just seemed like they were emotionally drained. So, looking forward, Coach Matt Swope, he's now on a positive streak. He says this team really just needs to string off a couple wins, win 3, 4, 5 in a row, and this team can be dangerous. Now, right now, they're sitting outside the 12-team Big Ten playoff bracket. They're 17-21. Their conference record is not great. It's 4-11, but they do have some easy matchups coming up. They got one against Nebraska next weekend after they face Indiana this weekend. They got one against Minnesota in May. Both of those teams are Big Ten bottom dwellers. Now, if you can pull a series win out of those two, you have a shot. Rutgers, another team that's going to be vying for one of those final playoff spots in the Big Ten. If you can get a series win there, it is feasible that Maryland can make the postseason. And, when they get in, I've been saying this all season, if they get in, I do think they have the roster to string off a couple wins and make some noise. They just have to get in.
I don't know. I'd push back on that a little bit. Whenever a team is vying to get in, it probably doesn't mean they're going to be super competitive. This team is too...
Penn State did it last year. They squeaked in. They beat Maryland in College Park the last week of the season, then went on to go into the Big Ten championship game and lost to Nebraska. So, with the offensive firepower that this team has, if you can get a really good start, and then, in a tournament setting, I don't think you're going to get good relief from Maryland. You got to build a lead quickly, but they have the offensive firepower to do that.
I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm just saying when you look at this team and their resume so far, they're 2-8 in games decided by 2 runs or less. That's just, it doesn't give you much confidence that in a tournament setting when those games are going to be close and they're going to come down to the stretch. It's hard to think at this point in time in the season, this team would be clutch in a tournament style game, which is what they would need to be.
It's all about roles. I personally like the move of Cespedes to the closer role. I think he's shown some of the best stuff on the pitching staff. Obviously, he's a freshman. Mistakes are going to happen. Maybe that was Saturday night against Oregon, but they're trying. It's not like Jimmy Jackson, Matt Swope are just throwing it in the rest of the season. They're trying to make it work somehow. They're trying new solutions. They're throwing guys in new roles. I think Cespedes in a closer role can work out in the long term. If not this season, definitely next season and his junior season.
Mike, we keep saying that this team, if they make the tournament, they can make a run. Jimmy Jackson and Matt Swope are really trying. So 2 things to that. I think, one, there's no question that Matt Swope and Jimmy Jackson are crying. There's nobody that wants Maryland baseball to win more than those two. There's no question. They're coaches. it doesn't excuse them from the fact that this team's roster has not been good enough at all this season. No matter what we like to say and throw around that the roles haven't been established, they've gone through injuries, yada, yada, yada. This team is giving up multiple 10-plus run games. They haven't had a Big Ten series that they've controlled from a pitching standpoint all season. Their past Big Ten series, here's some of the runs they've given up. I just want to point these out. 13, 11 to Georgetown, 11, 15, 7 against Illinois, 11, 18, 6 to Northwestern. Washington was a different story. They gave up 12 runs in one of the game, but then obviously controlled the series from the other standpoint. Against UCLA, 11, 3, and 12. These are multiple 10-plus run games that are being allowed, which is, you can say however much, Maryland's trying. They haven't found a recipe for success, and ultimately that falls back on the staff that, frankly, I think at this point we've realized that the talent on the pitching staff isn't good enough to compete at a high Big Ten level that Maryland wants to be at. It clearly isn't. No matter what, I mean, there are promising young arms. I like Yeager, I like Cespedes, but they're not doing enough in terms of recruiting or development to make these guys ready to go, because if something keeps happening time over time, it's not just an aberration or a potential, like they can change this to fix it. Eventually the talent isn't good enough. And then I want to say, you keep bringing up the Big Ten tournament. If Maryland just gets in the Big Ten tournament, they have a chance. And Penn State, yes, is a rightful example, but I went back and looked at Penn State's schedule from last season. They had won multiple Big Ten series. They had competed against some of the top teams in the conference. That has not been the case with Maryland this season. They beat UCLA and Oregon once, respectively, correct. Those other two games against those teams, combined run difference against the Bruins and the Ducks, 6, 6, 1, and what was the 10? So you're not exactly looking at competitive games. I guess my question to you is, even if this team does make it, what gives you confidence that they can really string together, multiple games, multiple, chances to potentially blow leads, to not get off to strong offensive starts, which has been a problem all year? Why should Maryland fans have any confidence that that Big Ten tournament could go any differently?
Well, those two games you bring up, the one against UCLA on Friday night, the 12-6 loss, that was a game that Maryland was tied 6-6 heading into extra innings. And yes, they did blow that game, and they gave up 6 runs in the 10th inning with Ryan Van Buren on the mound, which is something nobody wants to see. But they were in that game. They nearly won it. Again, with Oregon the past Saturday. That was a game that they were leading heading into the 9th inning. They were so close, and they've been so close on a lot of these losses, not just those 2 conference games. I could point to the Western Carolina series. I can point to the midweek against Virginia. Like, they have been close against really good teams this season. They just haven't been able to put it through yet. If they can figure that out, and there's still time left, there's 5 series left. I mean, anything can happen. It's baseball. Baseball, obviously.
What move haven't they tried though at this point? Like, we say they can figure it out. They haven't. Like, there's no more
Evans.
cards.
I mean, I would agree with you about the transfer stuff, and Matt Swope would agree with you too. He told me, that he would agree with that notion. The transfer arms have not performed up to expectations that they had entering the season. Andrew Koshi, I would say, is a disappointment. I would say Jack Wren, he's been serviceable, but obviously not somebody who you can trust to put into in a high leverage situation. Devin Milberg has been serviceable, but not somebody who you can say is a top relief option in the conference. He would agree with that. Transfer portal is hard, though. Like, you're going to be shooting darts on a lot of guys who you don't know if they've proven it or not. Logan Barrier, just a couple years ago, literally last season, he pitched at Longwood. Nobody would have known that he would come in and become the closer for the Terps last season, getting 6 saves, the go-to guy in the 9th and 8th inning.
Brother, you're not answering the question, though. Like,
what's the question?
What options do they have to turn to? You keep saying, if they get this fixed. They've blown leads now 10 times in the 7th inning or past, and they've gone to like 8 different options. Like, what else is there to turn to other than just hoping that eventually this will change, which to me is literally the definition of insane. If something keeps happening and you refuse to believe that it'll happen again, that's insanity.
Well, I mean, for starters, Evan Smith was supposed to be a weekend starter this year and got injured after the first weekend. So that immediately put them in a hole where now they're moving arms around, putting Jake Yeager into a Sunday starter role where I think it's worked out. But that's a I don't want to call him a veteran arm because he's only a sophomore this year, but that's somebody who you expected to pitch big-time innings for you this year who's been hurt. I think if Evan Smith comes back and you have a more solidified weekend rotation, maybe someone like Logan Hastings, who was starting for the Terps, can move back into a relief role, somewhere where he might be a little more comfortable as a freshman, somewhere where he's not putting as much stress on his arm. I think keep trying out Cespedes in the relief role. I like that. I like seeing him as a closer. I think he's got the best stuff. And yeah, he might blow saves, but at this point of the season, it's worth trying stuff out like that. Like, I'm tired of watching Andrew Johnson come in and blow a game. I'm tired of watching guys like Ryan Van Buren, Andrew Koshi, Omar Melendez pitching in these high leverage situations where they just can't come through, and that's the only option you got. Put all the cards on the table, keep Cespedes in that role, and hopefully Smith comes back. That injury happened in February. According to Swope, he should be back sometime in April or May. He's expected to come back this season, but I mean, like you said, they are, they've tried everything, and it does keep repeatedly happening, and that is a testament to the roster construction.
All right, I think that's enough of beating the dead horse, which is the Maryland baseball team at the moment. But I do appreciate our in-depth look, and this is a team that obviously you know very well, and so it is nice to kind of flesh out all of our ideas.
If Mike's tired about watching, relievers go in, then I can assure you the audience is tired of us listening to talk about them.
Yeah, let's talk softball for 1 second. They broke their 10-game losing streak, but don't be impressed because they beat Maryland Eastern Shore. I'll now give you guys the opportunity to guess where University of Maryland Eastern Shore sits on the softball RPI standings. For a heads up, there are 309 teams in RPI for women's softball D1.
307.
Mike, what do you got there for me?
270.
309. They beat the worst team, and they beat them pretty handily, actually. They beat them 19-0 in 5 innings in a run rule. So they did break their 10-game losing streak, which kudos to them, but I would not be super enthused with that win because they still have not won a Big Ten game since back on March 22nd. And in a sport where you're playing 3 to 4 games a week and not having won one in almost a month is not a great look. They will have they play Delaware on Wednesday. They have this weekend off, which I'm sure they will use to kind of retool and get ready for next weekend. And they have Penn State series and Nebraska series to close out the season. Overall, just we knew this wasn't going to be an incredible season for them. They're still obviously building with Lauren Cohen, but I wouldn't be surprised if the new athletic director takes a look at the softball program. That's where I'm at this point. If we talk about hot seats in the fall, that's kind of my thoughts on the softball program at the moment.
Yeah, definitely. It just seems like things are spiraling and have been that way for a while now. So interesting to look at the two ball sports here in the spring. Got coaches that are, having down years for a couple seasons in their first 2 years. So that'll be fascinating to watch. Let's really quick, before we head into Terrific Terp, hit on athletic director candidates. Taylor Lyons, friend of the program, Baltimore Sun reporter, released a article detailing 4 potential names that have been discussed. Maryland President Pines told me and other reporters that they were planning to announce a search firm this week. They didn't announce, but Lyons reports that Turnkey, a search firm, is being in charge of the search. A lot of searches in that sentence. Sorry, guys. Listed out 4 candidates. Brendan, really quick, can you hit on the 4 that Lyons listed, and what are your thoughts on who might be the best candidate?
Yeah, 4 have been identified. There's the Air Force Athletic Director, Nathan Pine, Georgia Tech Athletic Director, Jay Batt, George Washington Athletic Director, Michael Lippitz, and then former Charlotte FC President, Joe LeBou. So I think it's hard to know, at this point in the process, like how much has Maryland actually been in contact with these people and how much, what their interest level is versus to the interest level of Maryland having in them. I would say, at least in my opinion, you'd have to think probably the Georgia Tech athletic director would be the best person to go to. I'm not, Maryland obviously pulled from previously Damon Evans, who's the Georgia athletic director. Air Force doesn't really seem like a a program that would be that comparable to a Big Ten program at Maryland. Obviously, a service academy has a lot of differences. And then George Washington, athletic director, nearby, so probably has some ties to the area. And then the one that has actually kind of been rumored even before this search started, which was the Charlotte FC president. I think he definitely has some, pull because he has the Maryland history with him and went to Maryland. So I would say, if I had to make a prediction of who I think could be the top candidates, it would probably be Jay Babb from Georgia Tech and then Joe LeBou from Charlotte FC. But it's really early in the process, and it's names to keep an eye out for.
It's like we were saying all along, like the athletic director, it's not going to be a flashy name. Most likely it's going to be somebody that nobody knows before they are hired. So I think LeBou, being a Maryland graduate, that's a pretty promising sign. Obviously, calls from a lot of alumni, specifically Len Elmore, that they want to have a more Maryland-based athletic department. So didn't do that with the coaching hire, but I think the athletic director role, that's somewhere where they can kind of look towards that and see, all right, who has Maryland roots, who went to the school, who knows the area. So that'd be pretty promising if they did that. It was pretty interesting that it seems Maryland Athletics refuted Taylor's report, which they also did when he reported about Willard leaving the night after their Sweet 16 loss. So that leads me to believe Taylor, everything that he reported is true. LeBleu, LePitts, Bat, and Pine, they're all options for the athletic director role, and they're kind of zeroing in on those.
Yeah, I mean, a new candidate could pop up. Obviously, Lions report, lists that, of course, that this doesn't mean the list is exclusive to these four. That's just, who they've been kind of, who are some of the people they've been talking to. And I'm sure that there will be more names that will pop up. But that's it in terms of current athletics. Brendan, give us terrific Terp and game of the week, and then let's get out of here.
Game of the week, very quickly, has to be the rivalry between Maryland and Johns Hopkins in men's lacrosse. I'll start us off. I think Maryland takes this one 12-7.
I'll go Maryland 13-8. I think kind of right in that 5-goal range. Feel like, the Ohio State win seems like a sort of propeller now moving forward. And you don't have concerns about them getting up for Johns Hopkins.
Yeah, I'm going to go Maryland 14-9, like you said, Sam. That Ohio State win, big for confidence, big to propel them into the rest of the season and kind of build off of that into this final stretch and then into postseason play.
All right, we got all Terps for the game of the week. We'll have to see how it plays out. Maryland hasn't beat Johns Hopkins in a couple years in the rivalry game, so they'll definitely be motivated. Let's go Terrific Terp. This week's Terrific Terp is one of the greatest Maryland men's soccer players of all time. Maurice Adu is now known for commentating behind a mic on commentating the MLS on Apple TV and also the World Cup. However, if you go back to 2004 when Adu walked onto campus in College Park, he was a relatively unknown member of Sasha's squad. Adu grew up all the way across the country in California, but he decided to come to College Park anyway. In his freshman year season, the Terps nearly played for a national title, but they lost to Indiana in the national semifinal. Adu scored a goal in that game despite recovering from a knee injury, which sent the game into extra time. However, the Terps lost. In his sophomore year, the skilled midfielder scored 3 goals and had 5 assists. However, he was a very key piece on the 2005 national championship team. In his final year with the Terps, he earned first-team All-American honors. That helped him to be the number 1 overall pick in the 2007 MLS Super Draft. He was drafted by Toronto FC and won Rookie of the Year in the MLS. In 2008, he was selected to the U.S. Olympic team. That led him to also be selected for the World Cup squad in 2010. From that point on, he spent the next 7 years playing for 5 different teams all across the world. He played in the Scottish Premier League, the English Premier League, which he played for Stoke City, and then he obviously played in the MLS because he was drafted there in 2007. Adu is now known for his soccer commentary, but was a very successful soccer player in the pros, on the national scale, and at the University of Maryland, making him this week's Terrific Terp.
Adu. That was another great Terrific Terp from Brendan. Appreciate everybody for listening to this week's episode. Make sure to follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, anywhere where you can find your podcast, YouTube, of course, and have a great week.
Guess what? You've got Under the Shell Podcast. Nobody does it better.